So as you can see, what we're going to do is quickly build a customer service bot, something that I think a lot of developers, a lot of brands can actually relate to is that as they are already being sort of communicated with their customers, they're communicating with them on Facebook Messenger. What are the kind of things that they can actually do, and how can they go about and planning that? So what we'll do is we'll start with a simple bot. And so in Botmock, we think of building conversation in two modes. One is really a flow-based mode where you're basically whiteboarding the conversation paths and how it can go about. The other one is that you actually have a particular user story that you want to prototype, and that user story is pretty much about one single flow of conversation, and you want to quickly prototype it and send it out to somebody and get some feedback. So those are mocks. So let's start with the flow first. And so when the editor itself is designed to, again, help as if it's a big giant whiteboard. So you have what we call each message node, which then becomes uses a real sort of as close as possible to the real templates that the platform offers you, and then be able to sort of put the constraints on the designer and the person editing it, so that they understand that there's a limitation to the platforms, but they don't have to worry about the end result being something that the developer comes back and says, "Hey, this cannot be done in Facebook Messenger or whatever the platform might be." So we start you off with a basic sort of clean slate with two messages in there. What we have is a visual cue starting point that says, hey, this is where your conversation is going to start from. Now, this could be something that they just clicked on Get Started button, or they came through on Facebook ad, whatever the trigger might be. So in our example, what we are doing is simply getting to a point where this is the first time they're going to interact with your chatbot. So one of the things that we usually recommend is that you greet them. So we'll say, Ahmed, I'm a bot. Let's say I can help you with questions. Some superstore that they're
Sure.
Right, so this basically the editing experience and everything is you can see the end result looks as if what the user would see in their messenger itself. So the next step is to create the follow-up message, and then you can just drag and drop the editor and the editor itself, and you'll get a list of all the templates that are available. Now we support pretty much all of them. I think there's only one left that we don't support, which is the assistant menu. Well, that's coming soon. So let's say we want to give them a button option, and we want to say something like, what would you like to do? And then buttons, you can give them options like view deals, customer service, or it could be products, right? So let's fix this up so we can reorder the buttons and all that stuff around it. Now, as I said, we take care of all the constraints that the platform has. So we know as a platform that Facebook only allows you to attach 3 buttons to a message. So we actually don't allow you to add more than that, which then enables your copywriters to stay on track for what the platform expects at the end of the day. So that's actually a very handy feature. The other thing you will see that we have a label on every sort of connector, and we'll come back to it in a bit. But let's say now that the next step is that the user actually tapped on one of those buttons, and we can show that as a payload that the user tapped on customer service. They can also tap on view products, let's say. All right. So just at this point, what I want to do is just quickly look at what these sort of connectors mean. So each of the connectors, you can have, you can define a label on it that tells the person who's reading this map that what needs to happen for the user to go to the next step, right? So in our case, nothing really. They just tapped on get started, and then again, we're not asking for any input. So nothing really needs to happen here. But in this case, for example, we can actually smartly detect which buttons they can press. What are the actions that they can take in the previous message? And then those button texts are already available to you. So you can say, hey, customer service was tapped, or they tapped on browse products, right? And then let's take up the customer service route. So we're just gonna go keep on building on this one. So the next step over here is that in the customer service area, you might want to get certain things like, acknowledge them that they're about to do something. They are trying to talk to your customer service. If it's not an automated, if it is an automated service and not a person talking to them, we sort of like to acknowledge that and give them the option so that they understand that this is a bot talking. One of the things that we noticed with a lot of conversation designers is, how much of a personality of your bot should be like a real human, and versus when you tell the person chatting with you that you're not a human, you're a bot. And we like to think that it's better for you to be upfront about it and tell them what it is. So let's say, what is your location? Let's say we ask them for a location. So I'm just going to show you a couple of the templates that we have here. So from the location, actually, let me delete this one, and I'm going to recreate this to be a quick reply. So we also support things like quick replies, which are great if you want to give the user a specific sort of suggestive inputs, but also leave them the thing that they can enter something in a free-form text field as well. So you can say, what's your location? And we can then say send location as a button there as an option. So when that happens, we can then mimic how the location would look like. So let's say they did click on that and they sent some sort of location around it. As you can see, we can quickly determine, what actions led to that point, and all of that stuff around it. But once you have the location, then we can ask them for certain things like, we can give them the option and say, okay, there's, what can I help you with? You can enter the text or so let's say it's find a store, track order. And let's do another one, which would be use more options, right? So there we go. So now we have given the user a sort of a predefined choices to choose from, but also told them that they can actually enter any text they want to ask a question. And this is a great example of where we think, as a conversation designer, you will run into these issues where because it's a chatbot, people want to chat with you. How do you control the balance between a great experience versus a free form where they can enter anything and then you're trying to guess what they're saying or have a really good NLP and NLU engine behind it? So we always think that, giving a user structured sort of options to choose from helps them also recover from an error state, right? So let's say in this case, somebody wants to track their order. So they say track order. All right. So, and in that, then ask them for something like, what is your order number? Right. And some of it might seem like very trivial, but this is something that helps. Being very explicit about what the input and output would be really helps somebody understand and walk through the conversation itself. All right. So now that we have that, we can give them certain things like, let's see, text. Answer processed. So I'll actually bring it here. We also gave them two options. So they select no, we want to bring them back to the menu, right? And if they say yes, that we want to continue on to something different. Let's say it's more of no. So actually, I'll do the virtual here. Yeah. So, I mean, already we can see that the conversation itself is getting to a point where it is complex. It seems more explicit in terms of more verbose and how the user starts flowing around. And we just did one part of it. But as you can see, with our solution, what you're able to do is quickly create these experiences, understand how these will work out, and then be able to sort of hone it down and say, okay, how do we make this better, faster, or more sort of interactive for our customer that is going through it? How are they going to be able to look at it and say, what the journey looks like? So one of the things that we actually allow you to also do is color code the map. So let's say this particular customer service engine is all green. So you can then start coloring all the paths that you have. Now, if you started off with a color path, so any other connection you make here would be that same sort of color. So I'm just going to do that, and you can see that it actually takes that color and goes on with that. And what that does is allows you to quickly, give somebody an overview of, say, hey, I mean, if you're looking at this map, I'm talking about the green path. So they can look at it and say, okay, what's happening in the green path, and not worry about the giant document that you will eventually have. But it also allows you to quickly look at all the steps that the user has to complete, right? And what can you do to make it better? So, for example, in our case, if we go back to the beginning of the customer service side of things, we assumed that we didn't have the location for the user. And that's great because the first time along the way, we might not have it. But what happens if they come back? If I come back as a user after our first interaction, you want to showcase that to your team members, and you can say, retrieve location. Let's make this here and this guy over here. So now you can already see if somebody from a dev team is looking at this map and saying, okay, what needs to happen after the customer service button is tapped? There are two possible ways you can go about it. If you don't have a location, well, you want to go and ask for the location. But if you do already know about something about that user, you want to jump into the next message and skip that path. And that allows from a user's point of view and from a developer's point of view as well, that allows them to actually use this as a dev document. And from a designer's point of view, you are now looking at all the possible ways that you can actually improve the experience of the user. And that's critical. That's exactly what the idea of prototyping is to improve on those assumptions that you might have. Now, what I've done is we're going to cheat a little bit. I've already created a bit more complex map. So we're going to jump onto that one.
Awesome.
And save some time, because these things, as I said, I mean, they take time to develop, but once you have it, it's pretty neat. So this is a similar customer service example that we just looked at. We have the option of going and finding a store. I did a couple of stories here where you are tracking an order, and also you can actually say that things like I don't have my or I want to do something else like return an item. So they actually wrote something custom and didn't select any of the options. So one of the things that I want to showcase, what we ran into this issue early on, and most of our customers requested this as well, is that this is great that we have a giant map, but when you're showing it to your customer, you want to show a particular user story. And your user story might be of a very specific use case. So for example, it could be something like, hey, I want to, here's how the customer is going to track their order. So what we have for that, let me just type that. Okay. And what we have for that is something called previews. Now, I've already created 2 previews, but we'll create one from scratch. And a preview essentially allows you to extract one particular user story or path. It could be a happy path or a sad path, but you can extract a path and then share that with somebody and say, hey, this is how the experience for that particular user story will look like. So, for example, let's do one where we're going to do tracking order. We already have one, but we'll call it a different one. And now if we go back, the system then basically is going into a mode where it says, okay, you want to create a preview? Tell me what is the path that the user is going to take. So you can start from the top and say, okay, they're going to get this message. As I said, we have the option of ask a location and don't ask a location. We say, oh no, we don't want to ask them for location. They want to track an order. Do you have that number? And they're processed and they go back here and we can save it. So now if you go back to the previews, we have a tracking order preview. And here's where the magic happens. When you actually click on previewing it, you actually get to actually see in animated mode what that interaction really looks like. So now if you send somebody this particular preview, they're able to actually really experience what the conversation will look like and not worry too much again about the entire map and all the other paths they can take. And this is great in terms of creating particular user stories. As I said, we have return product as another story, and then they can go in that and sort of experience that particular story around it. The other thing we have is commenting, which is a very common thing. When you're doing collaboration with your team members, you want to be able to give sort of suggestions and feedback. So we have a document-based entire document sort of comments in one place, so you can quickly view them. But that's only useful if you have a generic comment around the entire experience. But usually you want to go in and give your feedback for a particular message. For example, over here you can say things like, can we have track order as the first option? Let's say, right? And once you do all that comments and everything, they are attached to that message itself, but they're also available in the global sort of view. So they can actually look at it. Somebody is looking at the entire document and say, oh, somebody actually requested that or actually talked about it. But they're all threaded nicely in different places. You're also able to export this as an image, and we send you a PDF as well as a PNG document. You can share a link. This is shareable you can make it private so that only your team members who are logged in will have access to it, or you're sharing it with everybody in the world, but they're not able to then edit it or put any comments on it. They're just able to view it. But if you want to invite more people, if you're for your clients or your team members to come in and collaborate with you, you can invite them with an edit mode, which is members, or you can have them only for commenting mode, where they're not able to edit document, but they're able to put comments in there, which are reviewers, all from one place, one location, and they get to be part of your experience.
Hey, so quick question. That video of the preview you showed us, is that exportable as well too?
Yes, it is. So right now, what you have to do is you have to export it as a mock project, and then you can export that into a GIF or a video. So this can go into a GIF or a video now.
Gotcha. That's awesome. I love that feature.
Yeah, it's really handy because it allows you to actually keep the focus of a conversation in one place. And you can actually tweak this to be certain speeds. You can say, how long between the messages. You can add more sort of control on it. And, you can show a typing indicator, for example. So when you preview it, it actually looks as real life as possible. And we do this for Facebook. We also do voice previews for Alexa and Google Home. So you really get to hear the entire conversation in one place.
Oh, you do voice previews as well?
Yeah, so we'll do a quick one on that one. A quick demo of that as well. Let's go back here. So where's this going? So let's do a Alexa demo. So we'll create a quick flow. for Alexa. And in Alexa, the thing is that it's usually just two people talking kind of experience. Right now, we will be adding support for Alexa Show soon as well. So, for example, it could be actually, let's do it this way. This guy. So let's say the user said, Alexa, what is the weather outside? And Alexa already knows where you are. So let's say, yeah. Let's do this one. All right, so we'll do a quick, simple one. So start it off. That's what the two messages are. So, but you can now preview it, and hopefully you'll hear it too.
Alexa, what is the weather outside?
The weather in Ottawa is 5 Celsius and snowing.
So now you can send this as a preview to somebody else in your customers, clients, team, and not have to worry about them having an Alexa device, having to install a skill, having to understand what they have to say to get the skill to working in a prototype mode, and all of the complexity around it. You can actually focus on what's important, which is the experience around it, rather than the entire. We have had clients where they would actually take an Alexa with them, a device with them. They have a test demo skills that are installed, and then they would show it to the client, and they were like, "Oh, this is how the conversation will flow." But then invariably, client wants to play because it's exciting, and they say something, and the skill just breaks all over the place because it's not designed yet, it's not developed. So, and then the conversation can go sideways. So this way, we can keep it in one place. One of the things that we are working on in the future releases is interactive these prototypes and previews. So you will be able to talk in to your browser and then get feedback as if you're doing a real conversation with a device. So that's something that's coming down the road. Yeah.
Would you guys, I mean, for the voice demo, would you guys have some sort of NLP in the background that can answer our questions if it was, something out of the borders that we programmed it to? So
we are going to have very rudimentary, I wouldn't call it NLP or NLU, it's more of a string matching, pattern matching kind of deal. Sure. Something that most designers can use and writers can use. But what we will do is we will take inputs that might or might not be correct and flag them so that as a designer or as a developer, you can look at you can actually train your model that way too. So you can collect data and say, okay, these are all the failed states that the user can say. These are all the happy states the way the user can say. And then, we'll start off with very basic rudimentary pattern matching. And then from there, depending on what our customers are looking for and what we are able to achieve, we'll probably add more of integration with things like API.ai or with AI. Because I think they solve the problem really well already. So there's no point in us reinventing the wheel. The other thing is we also have an API. So you can, whatever we built, all the documents that you see over here, you're able to actually extract all of them through our API as a developer and get in JSON formats. So you can actually query the entire document, even get the particular messages and get payloads for those messages too that you can deliver directly to your platform. So for Facebook, for example, right now we support 100% parity on payloads. So as a developer, you can safely extract a message with copy and use the payloads to store them in whatever platform you're integrating with and then use them.